Hello, everybody. I have the pleasure to be introducing Paul Harping today. I think most of you guys know he's an amazing person, brilliant, easy to be around. He graduated with a bachelor's in religion and specialization in Islamic thought, and the PCC vision brought him over here. And he's continued the Islamic thought route, and it's like studying Taoism, so he's a broad range of field. And he's very passionate. He's sparked by the idea of the star soul. I've had the pleasure of hearing his talks at Burning Man, just one-on-one, and very passionate about it. So I feel very honored to introduce Paul Harping. Thank you.
So I'll start with something that I've noticed over that emanates through the intellect and then passes through the sphere of the fixed stars, which was envisioned as this sort of globe that encompassed all of the other spheres and then had these sort of holes in it that the light came through, that the one was emanated into the material world through this. Now, he acknowledges, though, that there are differences in the stars. And this is where a question and a problem gets raised. He says, it is that loftier light, falling variously upon the stars, to each in a certain proportion that gives them their characteristic differences, as well as in magnitude as in color. So if we have the same source that's emanating through each one of these stars, they should have similar qualities. They should have the same qualities in a sense, since they're all being radiated through equally into the material world. This remains the case for several hundred years as philosophy left the Greek world and entered Islamic thought. It carried all the way up through it's called the peripatetic tradition within Islamic philosophy, which is the major school. We know in the West the philosopher Ibn Sina as Avicenna, and his work was incredibly influential in reintroducing Aristotle to the West, but he also was incredibly influential within the Islamic world for his commentaries and his spectacular understanding of Aristotle and Plato. He was studied by this fellow Suhorvardi, who was defending Ibn Sina's cosmological model when he had a vision, as a matter of fact. He had a vision from, it's some debate as to whether it was a vision of Aristotle or a vision of Plotinus, but he has this vision that says, no, that's not quite how it works, as he's staunchly defending this view of reality. So he engages in Sufi practices for several years, and he begins to explore the intuitive side of philosophy, the experiential side of it. And when he returns to writing, he writes solely in the language of light. He has removed being and a number of Aristotelian concepts from his thought, and speaks in things solely in light. So this affects how his cosmology is structured, and this affects the sphere of the fixed stars particularly. Suhorvardi says, since we meet with a star in each of the ethereal barriers and in the sphere of the fixed stars, with such stars as are beyond the power of man to number, to these must correspond individuals and aspects beyond our reckoning. So right there, he acknowledges the differences in the stars, but he gives each one of them a characteristic, gives them an individuality. He later goes on to say, each star in the sphere of fixed stars has a particularity, requiring it to be necessitated, and requiring something to necessitate it by which it is particularized. So he, in a sense, inserts another soul into this emanation scheme. So he maintains this gradient, but the byproduct of this is that he blows open the cosmos, and the sphere of the fixed stars is no longer this encapsulating globe. It is rather our window out to seeing all of these other star souls that have the same features as our own sun. Each one of these, he calls them managing lights. Each one is capable of managing the light, his term for the one, or roughly analogous to the one, which is al-nur al-din, which means the light of lights, which holds the loftiest position beyond outside our universe, and then radiates through a number of series until we get back to that sphere of fixed stars, which is now no longer a sphere except in our perception as to how we can look out and experience and engage with the rest of the universe. A byproduct of this is that it creates interaction. Part of his doctrine of illumination is that the light radiates out of all of these points of entry into the material world and then interacts with each other. He says, and it is, Plotinus again, here we go. The fixed stars and their sphere result from the interaction of the rays of all of them, especially the lower weak lights with the aspect of dependence. The constellations of the fixed stars correspond to the interaction of the rays with the aspects of independence, dominance, and love, and the extraordinary correspondences between the perfect, intense rays and the others. The dominating lights bring into being the celestial archetypes of species and the talismans of the simples, the elemental compounds, and all that is beneath the sphere of the stars. So here we enter into this constellation of creation where it is not even necessarily one of these managing lights that is interacting and managing, organizing, creating further potentials within the universe around it. It is the way that that light interacts with the other lights and how all of these lights can be reflected through the lower lights, the dependent lights. Each one of these star souls, these managing lights, exists along a ray, which is connected to the one as well as reflected through each step along the way. This gets to a really interesting mathematical point that he raises, which in observing and recognizing that there is multiple reflections happening at each one of these levels, we have an almost fractal-like emanation, an exponential amount of lights that are affecting every other light as we descend through the levels. This creates these constellations in the heavenly spheres that lead to the concepts of archetypes that we have, as well as the talismans, which we mentioned in there, which are roughly equivalent to the Platonic forms. These are the things that allow us to experience the world around us. For him, light was essential. Light was all there was, which is why he abandoned so much of the Aristotelian vocabulary that he used previously. This new revelation in that light is what is self-aware and what makes other things noticeable. Is not his language, but its light is the first thing that is self-evident to itself, as well as what makes possible the recognition of the other. And through this emanation scheme, we reach out and we can co-create with all of the other lights around us, whether they are the lights within each one of us, our own personal souls, the lights within the stars, the light within the sun. The light of the cosmos itself is constantly reflecting and radiating through the universe and is giving us our experience at any given moment. So, how do we do all that? You know, how do we feel the star soul? How do we understand and make that personal to us? If we're part of this cosmic harmony, How do we know it if it's so far away? And this is where the work of James Hillman comes in as a contemporary and part of a chain of transmission from Suhrawardi through Henri Corbin, as a matter of fact. James Hillman, in his essay on the world soul, develops and explores the concept of aesthesis, which is the awakening of the heart to the experience of the world, as well as the primary faculty of the soul, which is notitia, which is attentive noticing. So while we're out in this beautiful area and the clouds are breaking from time to time, we can all take a moment and we can look up and we can attentively notice how the sun is greeting us on each particular day that we're out here. We can look up at night and we can see far more stars than we could ever see if we were in San Francisco or in any other city. And when we look out at that, we don't just have to see lights out there, celestial fires. We can see cosmic kin. We can see our sons, brothers and sisters and aunts and uncles and grandparents. And we can feel a connection to each one of these. And we can attentively notice, as Plotinus and later Suhrawardi did, the particular qualities of each one of these stars and the way that each one of them can connect to us. Plotinus, returning to him, says at one point when he is discussing his concept of the daemon, or the tutelary spirit, says, "Our souls must give out its own special act. Released, each will inhabit there a star consonant with the temperament and faculty in act within and constituting the principle of life. And this star or the next higher power will stand to them as God, or more exactly as a tutelary spirit." So Plotinus in that passage makes explicit the connection that we can have with the star soul, with these primordial enactors of soulcraft and transmission and emanation into our material world that give birth to the worlds of our planet and to the worlds within our own mind and the worlds that we create and the communities that we form. These are the constellations that we create, and this is what brings it back down to earth. Because if we are all lights in the same way that all of the stars are lights, then we have the power to channel this cosmic harmony into our world, which so desperately needs something to bring it back into the fold and back into the harmony of the cosmos as the Greeks understood it. I'm going to go ahead and pause right there and ask if anybody has any questions or comments or would like me to explain something that I glossed over. I kind of just threw a lot out there, and I'd like to give an opportunity for anybody to respond if need be.
So, was it seen by Plotinus and this other mystic you were just speaking about that, in a sense, do we have the same light center in us that a star has, but on a micro level?
Within Plotinus, he has the portion of our soul that is undescended. So Plotinus makes a connection back to the One, and this connection is also inherent in Suhrawardi's cosmology, as the light of lights is transmitted directly to every other light, as well as through its intermediaries and the reflections of the intermediaries in between. So they both have this aspect that our soul is connected back to the ultimate primary cause, but it doesn't take But for Plotinus, it doesn't necessarily have the same multivalence that it has for Suhovardi. It doesn't have the same level of co-creative faculty in the way that many lights can be shown onto a single place and occupy a single space on a wall, and one can be shuttered and one can be unshuttered, and that locus still remains. Within ourselves, the multitude of lights that shine upon us, upon our consciousness, is something that we can only know through internal experience. Just as a light may not necessarily become more brighter the more lights or a wall may not become more brighter the more lights are shown upon it, and yet the lights are still there, we have to experience that for ourselves, and we have to understand what constellations we are a part of, both in a cosmic scheme as well as a anthropomorphic scaled scheme. Anybody else?
I just think this is exquisite. Thank you so much. And I don't know if you've talked with Becky at all, who's been working on a thesis around the Platonic idea of the star twin. I think maybe her topic has evolved from there, but we originally had a discussion about that. So the idea that everyone on Earth actually has a star. And so that sounds like there's some overlap with the thinkers that you presented. I'm just wondering if you had any thoughts about that or any familiarity with it or how it might tie into this.
I'm not familiar with her work. I heard her present on the sort of the linguistic evolution of
Right,
the
or
star.
just like Plato's concept of all individuals on Earth having a star.
I think that's an excellent question for deeper research. But right now, my current understanding is that that is a potential within each one of us. I think it is up for us to engage that star soul, that stellar twin, that stellar daemon, and to bring it into our lives, our awareness, and our existence. I think it would be a beautiful thing if everyone could engage with the heavens in that way, and I think that would give us a cosmic awareness that would allow us to transcend a lot of the divisions that can occur in an earthly realm. So I think that's fascinating, and I would love to talk with her about that at some point.
Yeah.
See what her research has been.
Just when you were talking about kinship, a couple days ago I was imagining that there's a new map of the universe as much as we know it and understand it at this time. And there's huge sections that are like very, very clustered, large, dense clusters of galaxies, and then there's big voids where there's nothing going on, or nothing visible, invisible light, as sure there's something going on. But that we live in sort of a nondescript part of a tendril of a sort of medium-sized cluster, not much, everything, as far as we understand. But it's true. We're not like
Little
what?
nothing
But
has
that's,
some,
so we live wherever we live, and we have our standard. And then there's like, if we were in the middle of an enormous cluster where everything is just bunched together and bright and shining, that would be a different sense of kinship, as would being right on the edge of an enormous void where there's no nearby neighbors, and the beings that are in those places in the universe must have very different relationships with that question of star soul and all the family that's involved with the stars.
Absolutely. I'd imagine that if you were on a planet that was even just remaining within the Milky Way galaxy, if you were located far closer to the galactic center, it would be the night sky would probably be just as radiant, if not more so, than the daytime. And I think that undeniable, potentially oppressive connection would engage with an individual in an entirely different way. And it could be a wonderful thing to realize that your cosmic kin are that close, always looking out after you, and there's more than one often. Whereas we generally only have the experience of one or uncountable.
We have two suns, like double suns, just hanging out together, or like there's a lot.
There's so many, binary, trinary systems to have that sort of experience, and to see how philosophical, religious culture would address that question. If we were to just hypothetically to posit that we had a binary star system, Egyptian religion would have taken on an entirely different trajectory, most likely. Double Ra. That's raises all kinds of problems. ISIS would have to be very busy stitching lots of people back together. That's an awesome point, and it's definitely a wonderful thought experiment to engage with, to think about how our connection to the stars would be different if we were experiencing it in a different way.
Do you have a particular connection to a particular star yourself, or is it more a general connection to kin?
Personally, I feel the greatest connection to the sun. It is the closest one, and I feel it's the easiest to engage with, since we spend so much time with it, one-on-one per se.
Hey, buddy. Hey, you again.
Exactly, every day.
Oh, you again.
On a more personal level, I have two brothers, and so the belt of Orion has had a personal pull for me for a few years. The three stars there, which incidentally enough all still maintain their Arabic names, all mean belt in a different fashion.
And how do you connect to those on the belt, on Orion's belt, differently from our sun? What's the quality of this?
Subtlety is the first and foremost. It's much more subtle, and you can go outside on any sunny day and you can literally feel our sun. You can feel the warmth on your skin. You have that somatic sensation that is undeniable. When I try to connect with the stars of Orion's belt, it's a much more engaged process, and it's something that is at times more of a meditative exercise than a potential engagement, I guess you could say. It's something I'm still working on, and I'm in the process of trying to develop a practice that could facilitate that sort of connection.
Thank you.